The morning begins slowly, almost quietly, as if the world itself is still deciding whether to wake. A soft gray light rests over the land, not yet bright, not yet warm. It moves gently across the fields, touching the tops of wooden fences, brushing against the leaves of old trees, and settling softly along the narrow dirt road that leads into a small American village. There is no hurry here. No rush. Only the steady, patient passing of time. In the distance, a thin ribbon of smoke rises into the cool air. It drifts upward from the chimney of a modest wooden workshop, barely visible between two tall oak trees whose branches stretch wide and still. Inside that workshop, the day has already begun. The blacksmith is awake. He does not wake with alarm or noise. There is no sudden movement, no sharp beginning. His day starts the way most of his days begin, slowly, steadily, as if he has been part of the morning long before the sun itself appeared. He sits for a moment at the edge of his bed, a simple wooden frame with a rough wool blanket folded neatly at the foot. The room is small. The walls are plain. A single window lets in the soft early light, casting long, quiet shadows across the floor. The air is cool. He breathes it in without thinking. Outside, a bird calls once, then again, its voice soft and distant. Somewhere farther away, another bird answers, and then everything becomes still once more. The blacksmith stands. His movements are unhurried, practiced, familiar. He dresses in clothes that have been worn many times before. A thick cotton shirt, slightly faded. Heavy trousers, marked with the memory of past work. Leather boots, sturdy and dependable, waiting patiently by the door. Each piece is chosen not for appearance, but for purpose. Everything he wears has a reason. Everything he owns has a place. He washes his face in cool water from a ceramic basin. The water is fresh from the well, drawn up not long ago in the quiet darkness before dawn. It carries the faint scent of earth and stone, a reminder of the ground beneath everything. He dries his hands on a cloth hanging nearby. No mirror is needed. There is nothing to adjust, nothing to prepare beyond what is already known. His life does not change from day to day in sudden ways. It moves slowly, like the turning of a wheel. He steps outside. The ground beneath his boots is firm but slightly damp with morning dew. The grass bends gently under each step, leaving faint marks that will disappear as the sun rises higher. The air is cool against his skin, carrying with it the faint smell of wood smoke, iron, and the distant sweetness of open fields. He pauses for a moment, not out of hesitation, but out of habit. This small pause belongs to the morning. It is a quiet acknowledgement of the day ahead. The workshop stands only a few steps from his home. It is built of thick wooden beams, darkened over time by smoke and weather. The door is heavy, its surface worn smooth by years of use. He places his hand on it. Pushes gently. The door opens with a low, familiar sound. Inside, the space is dim, but not dark. Light filters through small gaps in the wood, thin lines stretching across the floor and walls. Dust moves slowly through the air, visible only where the light touches it. Everything is in its place. The anvil stands at the center, solid and unmoving, its surface marked by countless strikes. Nearby, the forge rests quiet for now, its bed of coals cold but ready. Tools hang along the walls, hammers of different sizes, tongs shaped for different tasks, each one worn smooth where hands have held them again and again. There is no clutter. No excess. Only what is needed. He moves to the forge first. This is always the beginning. He kneels slightly, arranging small pieces of kindling beneath the coals. His hands move with quiet certainty. There is no need to think about each motion. The work has been repeated too many times for that. A spark is struck. Then another. Soon, a small flame begins to grow. It moves gently at first, barely more than a flicker. Then it strengthens, feeding on the wood, reaching slowly into the coals above. The blacksmith watches. He does not rush the fire. Fire, like everything else in this place, has its own pace. To hurry it would be to misunderstand it. So he waits. The flame deepens in color, shifting from pale orange to a richer, warmer glow. The coals begin to respond, their surfaces darkening, then slowly brightening as heat moves through them. A soft crackling sound fills the space. It is not loud. Not sharp. Just steady. Just constant. The workshop begins to warm. The cool morning air gives way to a gentle heat that settles into the wood, the tools, the floor beneath his feet. This warmth is familiar. It is part of the day. He stands again, brushing a small trace of ash from his hands. His eyes move across the workshop, not searching, but noticing. Everything is as it should be. Outside, the light has grown slightly stronger. The day is beginning. And inside this quiet workshop, the first piece of iron waits nearby, resting silently on a wooden bench, as the fire slowly gathers enough strength to shape it. The iron rests where it has been left, quiet and still, as if it, too, is waiting for the right moment. The fire continues to grow. Its glow deepens, shifting into a steady, breathing heat that fills the forge with a soft orange light. The coals settle into themselves, forming a bed that holds warmth in a slow and patient way. The blacksmith stands near the forge, not moving much, not speaking, simply watching. There is a rhythm here, though nothing yet has been struck. A rhythm in the crackle of the fire. A rhythm in his breathing. A rhythm in the slow passing of time. He reaches for the bellows. They are made of thick leather, worn smooth by years of use. The wooden handles fit easily into his hands, shaped over time to match the grip that returns to them each day. He presses them gently. Air moves into the fire. The coals respond at once. Their glow brightens, small sparks rising and disappearing into the dim air above. The flame lifts slightly, stretching upward before settling again. He presses the bellows once more. Then again. Each movement is steady, unhurried, almost quiet in its intention. The fire grows stronger, not in a sudden burst, but in a calm and gradual way. Heat spreads outward, filling the workshop more completely now. The chill of the morning is nearly gone. The blacksmith sets the bellows aside. For a moment, he listens. The fire speaks in soft sounds, small shifts, faint cracks, the whisper of heat moving through coal and ash. It is enough. He turns toward the wooden bench. The iron bar lies there, dark and unremarkable, its surface rough, its weight simple and honest. It has no shape yet beyond what it already is. But that will change. He picks it up with both hands, feeling its familiar heaviness. There is no strain in the movement. His body knows this work. He carries it to the forge. With a pair of tongs, he places one end of the iron into the heart of the coals, where the heat is strongest. The rest of the bar remains outside, cool for now, waiting its turn. And then, once again, he waits. There is no need to hurry this part. Iron does not respond to impatience. It changes only when it is ready. The blacksmith stands beside the forge, his hands resting lightly at his sides. His eyes remain on the glowing coals, where the iron slowly begins to lose its darkness. At first, nothing seems to happen. Then, very slowly, the surface of the iron shifts. A faint red appears. Soft. Barely visible. The kind of change that can only be noticed by someone who has seen it many times before. He leans slightly closer. Not too close. Just enough to see. The red deepens. It spreads along the length of the iron that rests within the fire, moving gently outward like a quiet sunrise across metal instead of sky. The color becomes richer. Warmer. More alive. The workshop is silent except for the fire. Outside, the village is beginning to wake. A distant door opens. Footsteps move along the dirt road. Somewhere, a cart will turn slowly, its wooden rim pressing against the earth with a low and steady sound. But inside the workshop, those sounds feel far away. Here, there is only the fire. Only the iron. Only the quiet presence of a man who has done this work so many times that each moment feels both familiar and new. He reaches again for the bellows. A slow press. Then another. The fire answers. The iron grows brighter. Now it glows a deeper red, edging toward orange at its hottest point. The surface begins to soften, though not yet ready for the hammer. Not yet. The blacksmith waits a little longer. His patience is not forced. It is simply part of who he is. Time, in this place, does not move quickly. It settles. It stretches. It breathes. At last, he nods slightly, though no one is there to see it. The iron is ready. He grips it firmly with the tongs and draws it from the fire. The glowing end leaves a brief trail of warmth in the air, a faint shimmer that disappears almost at once. He turns toward the anvil. Each step is measured. Each movement steady. The anvil stands as it always has, solid and unmoving, its surface cool compared to the heat of the iron now resting above it. The blacksmith picks up his hammer. It is neither too large nor too small. It fits his hand as if it belongs there. Because it does. For a moment, everything becomes still. The glowing iron rests on the anvil. The hammer is raised slightly. The fire continues to burn behind him. And then, gently, the first strike comes. A clear, steady sound rings out. Not loud. Not harsh. Just firm. Just certain. The hammer meets the softened iron, and the shape begins to change. Only a little at first. A small shift. A slight flattening. The blacksmith lifts the hammer again. Another strike follows. Then another. Each one placed carefully. Each one part of a rhythm that does not rush and does not break. The sound of hammer on iron fills the workshop now, steady and even, like a slow heartbeat. Between strikes, there are small pauses. Moments of stillness. Moments where the iron rests again, holding its new shape before the next gentle change. The blacksmith does not force the metal. He guides it. He listens to it in his own quiet way. The glow of the iron begins to fade slightly as it loses heat, its bright orange softening back toward red. He notices. He always notices. Without any sudden movement, he lowers the hammer and lifts the iron once more with the tongs. Back to the fire. Back to the waiting. Back to the slow and patient beginning that repeats itself again and again, like the turning of a quiet wheel that never truly stops. The iron returns to the fire without resistance, as if it remembers this place. The coals welcome it back. Their steady glow surrounds the metal once more, holding it in a quiet and constant heat. The color begins to rise again, slowly building from a dim red into something warmer, something softer, something ready. The blacksmith sets the tongs down for a moment and reaches again for the bellows. A slow press. Then another. The fire responds in the same familiar way. There is no surprise in it. No change in behavior. Only a deepening of what is already there. The coals brighten. A few small sparks lift into the air and fade before they can travel far. The heat gathers and settles, filling the forge with a steady presence that does not flicker or rush. The blacksmith watches, his posture relaxed, his breathing even. There is comfort in repetition. There is calm in knowing exactly what comes next. Outside, the light has grown stronger now. The gray of early morning has begun to give way to soft gold. Sunlight touches the edges of the workshop, slipping through the narrow gaps in the wood, stretching longer across the floor. Dust drifts lazily through the beams of light. Nothing moves quickly. Nothing demands attention. Inside, the iron continues to change. Its surface glows brighter now, shifting toward a full orange, the color of deep warmth. The edges soften in a way that can be seen, though only if one is watching closely. And he is. He always is. He steps forward, picking up the tongs once more, and gently draws the iron from the fire. The heat follows it for a brief moment, as if reluctant to let go. The air around it shimmers faintly. He turns again toward the anvil. The path between forge and anvil is short, worn smooth by years of the same steps, taken in the same direction, again and again. The iron is placed carefully on the anvil's surface. The hammer is lifted. And once again, the slow rhythm begins. Strike. A pause. Another strike. Each movement is measured, not by time, but by feel. The blacksmith does not count the blows. He does not need to. He knows when the metal is ready. He knows when it is not. The shape begins to emerge more clearly now. What was once only a straight bar starts to bend, to flatten, to take on a form that serves a purpose not yet fully visible. The hammer moves with quiet confidence. Not heavy. Not light. Just enough. Each strike presses the metal into place, guiding it without force, allowing it to become what it is meant to be. The sound fills the workshop again. A steady ringing. Not sharp. Not overwhelming. Just present. Between each strike, there is space. And in that space, there is calm. The iron cools slightly with each passing moment. Its bright orange softens to red once more. The blacksmith notices, as he always does, and after a few more careful strikes, he lifts it again. Back to the fire. Back to the beginning. This is the way of the work. Nothing is done in one motion. Nothing is rushed. Each step returns to the one before it. Heat. Shape. Heat again. Shape again. A quiet cycle that repeats itself throughout the day. As the iron rests once more in the coals, the blacksmith steps back. For a moment, he does nothing. He simply stands. The warmth of the forge rests against his skin. The smell of heated metal and burning wood fills the air, soft and steady, never overwhelming. Outside, the village has begun to stir more fully now. Voices can be heard in the distance, low and unhurried. A door closes somewhere. A horse shifts its weight, the faint sound of hooves pressing into dirt. A wagon rolls slowly along the road, its wooden frame creaking gently with each turn of the wheel. These sounds drift into the workshop, but they do not disturb the quiet. They become part of it. The blacksmith reaches for a small cloth and wipes his hands, though they are already clean in the way that working hands often are. There is always a trace of the work that does not leave. A faint darkening of the skin. A memory of heat. He sets the cloth aside and returns his attention to the fire. The iron is nearly ready again. Its color deepens, brightens, becomes alive once more. He lifts it carefully, bringing it back to the anvil. The hammer rises. Falls. Rises again. The rhythm continues. Steady. Even. Unbroken. The shape becomes clearer now. A curve begins to form along one end. A gentle bend, not forced, but guided slowly into place. The blacksmith adjusts his grip, turning the iron slightly between strikes. Each angle matters. Each movement changes the outcome in small but important ways. He does not rush. He does not hesitate. He simply continues. The sound of hammer and anvil carries softly out through the open spaces of the workshop, drifting into the morning air, becoming part of the village's quiet beginning. It is a familiar sound. One that belongs here. One that has been heard many times before. And will be heard many times again. The iron cools once more. Back to the fire. Back to the warmth. Back to the waiting that is never truly waiting, but simply part of the work itself. The blacksmith stands beside the forge again, calm and steady, as the cycle continues without end, each motion flowing gently into the next, like the slow and endless passing of a peaceful day. The fire breathes softly as the iron settles once more into its warmth. There is no urgency in the movement, no sharp change in pace. The blacksmith places the metal into the coals with the same steady care as before, as if repeating a quiet gesture that has no beginning and no end. The glow returns slowly. First a dim red. Then a deeper tone. Then, with time and gentle air from the bellows, a steady orange that spreads across the surface like a calm and patient light. The blacksmith rests one hand lightly against the wooden frame of the forge. The wood is warm now. Not hot. Just warmed by the hours of fire that have come before. He stands there for a while, doing nothing more than watching. The stillness is not empty. It is full in a quiet way. Full of small sounds. The shifting of coals. The soft pull of air through the bellows when he presses them again. The faint settling of tools along the wall as the warmth changes the space around them. Each sound belongs. Each one has its place. Outside, the morning has moved forward. The sunlight is stronger now, though still gentle. It falls across the doorway, stretching into the workshop in long, quiet lines. The dust in the air drifts through that light, slow and almost motionless, like tiny pieces of time suspended for a moment before continuing on. The village continues to wake. There are more footsteps now. More voices, though still low and unhurried. A distant laugh, brief and soft, fades quickly into the wider quiet. A dog barks once, then settles again. None of it interrupts the work. None of it changes the rhythm inside this place. The iron begins to glow more fully. The blacksmith notices the color without effort. He does not need to lean closer this time. He can see it from where he stands. He reaches for the tongs. Lifts the iron. Turns toward the anvil once more. The steps are the same. The distance unchanged. The floor beneath him holds the memory of each movement, worn smooth in the places where he has stood the most. The iron meets the anvil again. The hammer rises. And the sound returns. A steady strike. Then another. Each one placed with quiet care. The shape of the metal becomes more defined now. The curve that began before grows smoother, more even. The edges flatten where needed, then are rounded again with gentle adjustments. The blacksmith shifts the iron slightly, turning it between strikes, feeling its balance, its weight, its readiness. He is not forcing it into shape. He is allowing it to become. The hammer continues its slow rhythm. There is no break in it. No sudden change. Only a steady pattern that fills the space without overwhelming it. The sound of iron meeting iron is clear, but soft in its own way, softened by repetition, by familiarity. Time moves without being noticed. The iron cools again. Its bright color fades slowly. The blacksmith lowers the hammer, lifts the metal, and once again, returns it to the fire. The cycle continues. It always continues. He reaches for the bellows and presses them gently. Air flows. The coals brighten. The fire deepens. There is comfort in this motion. A quiet understanding between the man and the work before him. Nothing is unexpected. Nothing is uncertain. Each step leads naturally to the next. As the iron warms again, the blacksmith takes a small step back. He looks around the workshop, not searching, just seeing. The tools remain where they have always been. The walls hold the same marks. The anvil stands as steady as it did the day before, and the day before that. There is a sense here that nothing truly changes, and yet everything moves forward in its own slow way. Near the far wall, a bucket of water rests quietly. Its surface is still, reflecting a faint shimmer of light from the doorway. Soon, it will be used. But not yet. There is no need to rush ahead. The present moment is enough. The iron glows once more. The blacksmith returns to it. He lifts it from the fire, the heat rising gently into the air around it. Back to the anvil. Back to the steady rhythm. The hammer falls again. And again. The shape now begins to resemble something more familiar, though still unfinished. A curve with purpose. A length with direction. Perhaps a hinge. Perhaps a tool. Perhaps something simple, meant to serve quietly, just as everything here does. The blacksmith does not think about its final use in any hurried way. He knows what he is making. But he focuses only on this moment. This strike. This movement. This small and careful change. The iron cools. Back to the fire. Back to the warmth. The day continues. The rhythm remains. And within the steady cycle of heat and hammer, the quiet work carries on, unchanged and unbroken, as the morning slowly drifts toward the gentle fullness of midday. The morning has now settled into something fuller, though still calm. The light that enters the workshop is warmer than before, no longer pale, but soft and golden. It rests along the edges of the anvil and the wooden beams, giving everything a quiet glow that does not demand attention. The blacksmith places the iron back into the fire once more. The movement is gentle. Familiar. Without pause or thought. The coals receive it, surrounding the metal with steady heat. A faint shift in color begins again, almost too slow to notice unless one is watching closely. And he is always watching. He stands beside the forge, one hand resting lightly near the bellows. After a moment, he presses them again, slow and even. The fire responds. It always does. The glow deepens, the heat gathers, and the iron begins its quiet transformation once more. There is no need for anything else in this moment. No extra motion. No unnecessary thought. Just the fire. Just the iron. Just the steady presence of the work. Outside, the sounds of the village have grown slightly more active, though still gentle in their nature. A cart passes by at a distance, its wheels rolling over the packed earth in a slow and steady rhythm. Voices drift through the air, carried lightly by the morning breeze, never loud enough to disturb the quiet inside the workshop. A horse snorts softly somewhere nearby. Then stillness returns again. The blacksmith lifts the iron when it is ready. He does not check it in any formal way. He simply knows. The color tells him. The feel of the heat tells him. The quiet understanding that comes from years of repetition tells him. He carries it to the anvil. Places it down. The hammer rises. And the rhythm continues. Strike. A pause. Another strike. Each movement is calm, controlled, unhurried. The shape becomes more refined now. The curve that once seemed uncertain now holds its form with quiet confidence. The edges are smoothed, adjusted, corrected in small ways that would be easy to miss if one were not paying close attention. But he is. Always. He turns the iron slightly, adjusting its position beneath the hammer. Each angle reveals something new, something that needs to be shaped, something that asks for just a little more care. The hammer answers. Not with force, but with guidance. The sound fills the workshop again, steady and even, like a quiet rhythm that never asks to be heard, yet remains present all the same. The iron begins to cool. The bright orange softens into red. Then deeper. The blacksmith lowers the hammer. He lifts the iron once more. Returns it to the fire. The cycle continues. There is no break in it. No interruption. Only a steady flow from one step to the next. As the iron warms again, he takes a small moment to step away. Not far. Just a few steps toward the open doorway. He stands there, looking out. The village is fully awake now, though still calm in its own way. A few people move along the road, their steps unhurried. A child walks beside an older figure, their pace slow, their voices too soft to reach clearly. The fields beyond stretch out under the growing light, their green tones deepening as the sun rises higher. A light breeze moves through them, causing small ripples that pass across the land like quiet waves. The blacksmith does not linger long. He turns back. The fire calls him in its quiet way. The iron is ready again. He returns to the forge, lifts the glowing metal, and brings it once more to the anvil. The hammer rises. Falls. Rises again. The rhythm remains unchanged. But now, there is something nearing completion. The shape is clearer. More defined. The curve is smooth. The length is even. The purpose, though simple, has fully formed within the metal. He makes small adjustments now. Careful touches. Light strikes. Each one placed with intention, though never with urgency. The iron cools once more. But this time, instead of returning it immediately to the fire, he pauses. He looks at it. Not with pride. Not with judgment. Just with recognition. The work is nearly done. Still, there is one final step. He turns slightly and walks toward the bucket of water resting near the wall. The surface is still, reflecting the light in a soft and quiet way. He lowers the iron slowly. The moment it meets the water, a gentle sound rises, a soft hiss, like a quiet breath released into the air. Steam lifts briefly. Then fades. The water ripples outward, then settles again. The iron cools fully now. Its glow disappears, leaving behind a solid, finished shape. He lifts it from the water, sets it aside. There is no ceremony in this. No pause for admiration. Only a quiet completion. The first piece of the day is done. And without hesitation, without any sense of ending, the blacksmith turns back toward the forge. Because the fire is still burning. The day is still moving. And another piece of iron already waits nearby, resting silently, ready to begin the same calm and steady journey once again. The finished piece rests quietly on the wooden bench, still damp from the water, its surface dark and cool once more. It does not draw attention to itself. It does not need to. It simply exists now, shaped and complete, ready for its purpose, whatever that may be. The blacksmith does not look at it again. Not because it lacks value, but because the work moves forward. It always moves forward. He reaches for another length of iron. This one is slightly different. A bit longer. A bit heavier. Its surface is uneven in places, marked by the way it was formed before arriving here. But none of that matters. It will change. It always changes. He carries it to the forge and places one end into the coals, just as before. The fire accepts it without question. The same slow process begins again. Heat gathers. Color shifts. Time moves in its quiet, steady way. The blacksmith stands beside the forge, his posture unchanged, his breathing calm. There is no sense of repetition as something dull or tiring. Instead, it feels like a steady rhythm that continues without effort. Each motion flows into the next. Each moment belongs exactly where it is. He presses the bellows. Once. Then again. The coals respond, glowing brighter, holding the heat more deeply around the iron. A few small sparks rise and disappear. The sound of the fire remains soft. Consistent. The workshop holds that warmth now, settled into every surface. The wooden beams. The tools along the wall. The floor beneath his boots. Everything carries a quiet memory of heat. Outside, the day continues to unfold. The sunlight has climbed higher, filling more of the space beyond the doorway. Shadows have shortened, drawing closer to the objects that cast them. The air feels different now. Less cool. More settled. The sounds of the village come and go in gentle waves. Footsteps. Voices. The distant turning of wheels. All of it remains soft, never breaking the calm that rests inside the workshop. The iron begins to glow. At first, just a hint of red. Then more. Then stronger. The blacksmith watches without moving closer. He knows what he will see. He has seen it countless times before. And yet, each time, it remains quietly important. He lifts the iron with the tongs when it is ready. The heat moves with it, a faint shimmer in the air. He turns toward the anvil. Places the metal down. The hammer rises. And once again, the steady rhythm begins. Strike. Pause. Strike again. The sound fills the space, gentle but firm. The new piece begins its transformation. At first, the changes are small. A slight flattening. A subtle bend. The surface smooths under the weight of each careful strike. The blacksmith adjusts his grip, turning the iron slightly, feeling its balance shift as it begins to take shape. He does not rush. There is no reason to rush. The work will be done when it is done. The iron cools slowly. The color fades. He returns it to the fire. The cycle repeats. Heat. hammer, heat again. Each step flows naturally into the next, without interruption, without hesitation. As the iron warms again, the blacksmith moves with quiet ease around the space. He sets the hammer down for a moment. Reaches for a different tool. A slightly smaller hammer, its head shaped for more precise work. He holds it for a moment, feeling its weight, then sets it nearby, ready for when it will be needed. Nothing is done too early. Nothing is done too late. Everything has its time. The iron glows again. He lifts it. Back to the anvil. This time, the strikes are lighter. More controlled. The smaller hammer meets the metal with a softer sound, still steady, still even, but quieter in its tone. He refines the shape now. Edges are smoothed. Lines are straightened. Small details emerge where before there was only rough form. Each movement is careful. Measured. The blacksmith leans slightly closer, not out of strain, but out of attention. He sees the small changes. The subtle shifts that guide the piece toward its final form. The iron cools again. Back to the fire. The rhythm continues. Time passes, though it is not counted. The work fills the space in a way that makes time feel less important. There is only the present moment. Only the steady movement from one step to the next. Outside, the day has reached a quiet fullness. The village moves at its own gentle pace. Nothing hurried. Nothing loud. Inside, the forge continues to glow. The blacksmith continues his work. And the second piece of iron, like the first, slowly becomes something more than it was, shaped not by force, but by patience, by rhythm, and by the quiet understanding of hands that have done this work for many years. The second piece begins to take on a clearer form, though still unfinished, still moving slowly toward what it will become. The blacksmith returns it to the fire once more. The coals shift gently as the iron settles into them, making space without resistance. The glow surrounds the metal again, steady and patient, never hurried. He presses the bellows. The air flows softly into the fire. The coals brighten. The warmth deepens. Nothing about this moment feels new, and yet it does not feel old either. It simply continues, as it always has, without needing to change. The blacksmith stands with quiet stillness, his hands resting at ease. There is a sense that he is listening, though there is no clear sound to follow. Perhaps he listens to the fire. Perhaps to the iron. Or perhaps to the silence that holds everything together. Outside, the sun has risen high enough now to fill the doorway completely. The light stretches across the floor, reaching the anvil, touching the edges of the forge, and resting softly against the far wall. The shadows have grown faint. The day has settled into its middle hours. A soft breeze moves through the open space, carrying with it the faint scent of earth and grass. It passes through the workshop without disturbance, blending with the warmth of the fire in a way that feels balanced and calm. The iron begins to glow again. A steady orange spreads across its surface. The blacksmith steps forward. He lifts it carefully. Turns. Places it on the anvil. The hammer rises. Falls. The sound returns, steady and familiar. Each strike shapes the metal further. The form is now more defined than before. What was once only a rough length of iron now holds purpose in its lines, in its curves, in the way it rests beneath the hammer. The blacksmith works with quiet focus. His movements are small. Controlled. Nothing wasted. He adjusts the iron, turning it slightly, aligning it just so. The hammer meets it again. and again. Each strike leaves a mark, though not all marks can be seen. Some are felt. Some are known only through experience. The iron cools slowly. The glow fades. He pauses. Lifts it. Returns it to the fire. The cycle continues. It does not tire him. It does not weigh on him. It simply carries him forward, one moment into the next. As the iron warms again, the blacksmith takes a small step back and reaches for a cloth hanging nearby. He wipes his brow once, though there is no urgency in the motion, no sign of strain. The warmth of the forge surrounds him, but it is a familiar warmth. One that belongs here. One that does not need to be escaped. He sets the cloth aside. Looks once more toward the open doorway. The village continues in its quiet way. A figure passes by slowly, carrying something in their hands. Another stands near a fence, speaking in low tones that do not carry far. The world moves, but gently. Nothing presses. Nothing rushes. The blacksmith returns his attention to the fire. The iron is ready again. He lifts it. Back to the anvil. This time, his movements become even more careful. The smaller hammer rests nearby, and he picks it up without thought. The strikes that follow are lighter now. More precise. He shapes the finer parts of the piece, refining edges, smoothing lines, bringing balance to the form. The sound changes slightly. Softer. More delicate. Yet still steady. Still calm. The piece begins to feel complete. Not all at once. But gradually. Each strike brings it closer. Each moment adds something small, something necessary. The blacksmith pauses now and then, not out of hesitation, but to feel the work. To understand it. To allow it to settle. The iron cools again. He returns it to the fire one final time. The glow rises once more, though it feels different now, as if the metal itself has changed in ways that cannot be seen. He lifts it again. Brings it to the anvil. A few final strikes. Light. Measured. Enough. Then, without any sudden movement, he lowers the hammer. The piece rests on the anvil for a moment. Still. Complete in its shape. He lifts it with the tongs and walks toward the bucket of water. The surface remains calm. Unbroken. Until the iron touches it. A soft hiss rises. Steam curls gently into the air. The water ripples outward, then settles again. He holds the piece there for a moment, allowing the heat to leave it fully. Then lifts it out. Sets it beside the first. Two pieces now rest quietly together. Each one shaped through the same steady process. Each one carrying the same quiet rhythm within it. The blacksmith does not linger. He does not pause to consider what has been done. Because the fire still burns. The day is still moving. And there is always more work to be shaped, one calm and careful moment at a time. The two finished pieces rest side by side on the bench, their surfaces dark and quiet, holding no trace of the heat they once carried. They do not move. They do not call for attention. They simply remain where they have been placed, as if they have always belonged there. The blacksmith passes by them without pause. His steps are slow, steady, familiar. There is no need to look back. The work continues forward. Another piece of iron waits nearby. It lies where it has been resting, untouched, patient in its stillness. He picks it up with both hands this time. It is heavier than the others. Not by much. But enough to be noticed. He carries it to the forge. Places it into the coals. The fire receives it as it has received all the others. Without change. Without hesitation. The blacksmith reaches for the bellows and presses them gently. Air flows into the fire. The coals respond. The glow deepens. The heat builds. Everything moves as it should. Nothing asks to be different. He stands beside the forge once more. Watching. Waiting. Though it is not truly waiting. It is simply being present while the iron begins its slow transformation. Outside, the day has settled into a quiet balance. The brightness of the morning has softened just slightly, not fading, but easing into a steady calm. The sounds of the village have become less frequent now. Not gone. Just more spread out. A distant voice. The faint sound of something wooden being set down. A soft wind passing through leaves. All of it comes and goes without drawing focus. Inside, the workshop holds its own rhythm. The fire breathes. The tools rest. The air remains warm and still. The iron begins to glow. At first, a low red. Then stronger. Then a steady orange that spreads evenly across its surface. The blacksmith watches closely. This piece is larger. It takes a little longer. But time does not matter here. There is no need to measure it. Only to feel when it is ready. And soon, it is. He lifts the iron with the tongs. The weight shifts slightly as he moves. But his grip is steady. He turns. Steps toward the anvil. Places the iron down. The hammer rises. The first strike lands with a deeper sound this time. A fuller tone. The weight of the metal answers differently beneath the hammer. But the rhythm remains the same. Strike. Pause. Strike again. Each movement is measured. Controlled. The iron begins to change. Slowly. Gradually. The edges flatten. The surface smooths. The shape begins to shift from something undefined into something with quiet intention. The blacksmith adjusts his stance slightly. Not in haste. Only to find the right balance. The hammer continues its steady path. Up. Down. Up again. The sound fills the space, a calm and constant presence. The iron cools. The glow fades. He lifts it. Returns it to the fire. The cycle continues. It always continues. Heat. Hammer. Heat again. The same steps. The same quiet understanding. As the iron warms once more, the blacksmith reaches for a different tool. A long, narrow one, resting near the wall. He holds it for a moment. Feels its weight. Then sets it beside the anvil, ready for when it will be needed. Nothing is rushed. Everything waits for its moment. The iron glows again. He lifts it. Places it back on the anvil. This time, he uses both tools. The hammer in one hand. The narrow tool in the other. He positions it carefully against the iron, guiding where the hammer will strike. The movements are slower now. More precise. Each strike shapes not just the surface, but the depth. A line begins to form. A slight indentation. A controlled change in the metal that adds detail to its form. The sound is softer now. More focused. Less open. But still steady. Still calm. The blacksmith works in this way for some time. Though time is not counted. Only felt. The iron cools. Back to the fire. The glow returns. Back to the anvil. The shaping continues. Each step follows the last without interruption. The piece grows more defined. More complete. Not quickly. Never quickly. Only through patience. Through repetition. Through the quiet rhythm that fills the workshop from morning into midday. Outside, the light begins to shift again. Almost too slowly to notice. But it does. The day moves forward. As it always does. And inside the workshop, the blacksmith continues his work, shaping the larger piece with the same calm and steady hands, allowing it to become what it is meant to be, one quiet strike at a time. The larger piece of iron rests once more within the fire, its surface slowly returning to a deep and steady glow. The blacksmith stands nearby, his presence as constant as the warmth that fills the space. Nothing feels hurried. Nothing feels delayed. Everything moves at the same quiet pace it has held since the beginning of the day. The bellows move again beneath his hand. A slow press. Then release. The coals brighten gently, their glow deepening around the iron, holding it in a steady embrace of heat. Small sparks rise and disappear. The sound remains soft. Almost like breathing. The blacksmith watches without leaning in. He does not need to be closer. He understands the fire from where he stands. He understands the iron as it changes. Outside, the day has begun to lean slightly toward the afternoon, though the shift is subtle. The light at the doorway is still bright, but softer at its edges. The shadows have begun to stretch again, just slightly, reaching across the ground in long and quiet lines. A bird passes by, its movement quick but silent from this distance. Then stillness returns. The iron reaches its heat. The glow is even now. Full. The blacksmith steps forward. He lifts it carefully with the tongs. The weight is still there, but familiar now. Expected. He turns toward the anvil. Places the iron down. The hammer rises. And the deeper tone returns. Strike. A pause. Another strike. The sound is fuller than before, shaped by the size of the metal, but it carries the same calm rhythm. Each movement is steady. Measured. Nothing is forced. The shape begins to refine further. The lines created earlier are now strengthened, made clearer with each careful strike. The indentation grows more defined, guided by the tool he set aside before. He picks up that narrow tool again. Positions it carefully. The hammer meets it. A softer, more focused sound. He works along the length of the iron, guiding the shape with quiet precision. The piece responds slowly. As it always does. There is no resistance. Only gradual change. The blacksmith adjusts his stance again, shifting slightly to maintain balance. His movements are small. Almost unnoticeable. Yet each one matters. The iron cools. The glow fades from orange to red. Then deeper still. He lifts it. Returns it to the fire. The cycle continues. Always the same. Always steady. As the iron warms again, the blacksmith takes a moment to rest his hands at his sides. Not from tiredness. But from habit. A small pause that belongs within the rhythm. He looks once more toward the doorway. The village is quieter now. The earlier movement has settled. Fewer voices. Fewer footsteps. The day has reached a calm middle point where everything seems to slow just slightly. A gentle stillness spreads across the land. The fields beyond remain bright, though softened now by the angle of the sun. The breeze continues, light and steady. The blacksmith turns back. The fire remains unchanged. The iron glows once more. He lifts it back to the anvil. The hammer rises, falls. The rhythm continues. The shape nears completion. The edges are refined. The lines are clean. The weight of the piece feels balanced now, even in the way it rests beneath the hammer. He works with smaller movements now. Finer adjustments. The narrow tool guides the final details. Each strike is lighter, more precise. The sound softens. The iron cools again. But this time, he does not return it to the fire immediately. He pauses, holds it in the tongs, looks at it for a brief moment. Not to judge, not to measure, only to understand that it is nearly done. There is one final heating. One last return to the fire. He places it gently into the coals. The glow rises again, though quieter now, as if the metal itself has settled into its final form. He lifts it once more. Back to the anvil. A few final strikes. Light. Even. Enough. The hammer lowers. The sound fades. The piece rests still. Complete. He turns toward the bucket of water. The surface remains calm, reflecting the soft light of the afternoon. He lowers the iron slowly. The familiar hiss rises again. Steam curls upward, thin and gentle. The water ripples outward, then returns to stillness. He holds the piece there for a moment. Then lifts it. Sets it beside the others. 3 pieces now rest together. Each shaped through the same quiet rhythm. Each holding within it the steady passage of the day. The blacksmith steps back. Just slightly. Not to admire. Not to pause. Only to make space. Because the fire still burns. The light continues to shift. And the day, though calm and unhurried, is always moving forward, carrying the work along with it, one steady moment at a time. The 3 finished pieces rest quietly on the wooden bench, their darkened surfaces absorbing the soft light of the workshop. They no longer glow. No longer shift. They are complete in a way that feels final, though not celebrated, not marked, not announced. They simply are. The blacksmith moves past them again, as he always does. His attention does not linger. Not because the work is unimportant, but because it has already found its place in the day. There is always more to do. Another length of iron waits near the wall. This one is thinner. Lighter. Different from the others in a way that becomes clear the moment it is lifted. He holds it for a moment in his hands before moving. Feeling its shape. Its quiet weight. Then he turns toward the forge. The fire remains steady, unchanged, as if it has never stopped since the morning began. He places the iron into the coals. The glow responds slowly. Softly at first. Then deeper. The blacksmith reaches for the bellows again. A slow press. Then another. The fire brightens, surrounding the new piece in warmth. The familiar rhythm returns without effort. Without thought. Outside, the afternoon has settled more fully now. The sunlight is lower than before, though still bright. It spills across the yard in long, gentle stretches. The air feels slightly warmer, slightly heavier, as the day continues its quiet passage. A distant sound of movement passes through the village. Then fades. Inside the workshop, nothing changes in pace. Only the fire. Only the iron. Only the steady presence of work unfolding as it always has. The new piece begins to glow. The blacksmith watches until the color is right. Not too early. Not too late. Just right. He lifts it carefully with the tongs. Turns toward the anvil. Places it down. The hammer rises. And the rhythm begins again. Strike. Pause. Strike again. The sound is lighter this time. More delicate. The thinner iron responds differently beneath the hammer, changing more quickly, more easily. The blacksmith adjusts without hesitation. His movements remain calm. Measured. He shifts the piece slightly, working along its length with small, precise strikes. The shape begins to form quickly now, compared to the earlier pieces. But speed does not change the feeling of the work. It remains slow in spirit. Even when the metal changes faster, the rhythm inside the workshop does not. The hammer continues its steady motion. Up. Down. Up again. The sound is gentle, almost soft in its repetition. The blacksmith pauses between strikes, not out of necessity, but out of habit. To feel the metal. To understand its temperature. To know its readiness. The iron cools. He returns it to the fire. The cycle continues. Heat rising. Color deepening. The bellows moving in slow rhythm beneath his hand. Outside, the light shifts again, leaning further toward late afternoon. The shadows stretch longer across the ground. The breeze continues, steady and calm. A sense of quiet settling over everything outside the workshop, as if the day itself is growing more reflective. Inside, the blacksmith lifts the iron once more. Back to the anvil. The hammer falls. Again and again. The shape now begins to resemble something simple, functional, and complete. Not ornate. Not decorative. Just purposeful. A tool meant to serve quietly in another hand. The blacksmith does not think of where it will go. Only of what it is becoming. He works the edges gently. Smoothing. Aligning. Correcting small imperfections that appear only when one looks closely enough. The sound of metal against metal remains steady. Never loud. Never harsh. Just present. The iron cools again. Back to the fire. The glow returns once more, though softer now, as if the metal is already beginning to accept its final form. He lifts it again. Returns to the anvil. The final shaping begins. The strikes are lighter now. More spaced. More careful. Each one placed with intention. The narrow tool comes into use again, guiding the last details along the surface. The blacksmith moves slowly, even though the piece could be finished more quickly. But there is no need for speed. Only completion. Only care. The shape becomes clean. Defined. Finished in its simplicity. The hammer lowers for the last time. The sound fades into stillness. The blacksmith holds the piece for a moment. Then turns toward the water. The bucket remains still, reflecting the warm light of the late afternoon. He lowers the iron into it. A soft hiss rises. Steam drifts upward. The water ripples gently, then settles. He lifts the piece out. Sets it with the others. Now 4 pieces rest together. Each one different. Each one made through the same quiet process. The blacksmith steps back slightly, his hands resting at his sides. The fire still burns. The workshop remains warm. And the day, though slowly moving toward its end, continues its gentle rhythm without pause, carrying everything forward in calm and steady silence. The 4 finished pieces sit together on the bench, quiet and still, their forms settled into the calm of completion. The blacksmith does not arrange them. He does not separate them. They simply rest where they were placed, as if the wood beneath them has always been meant to hold that shape, that weight, that silence. He turns away without delay. The fire still burns. And so the work continues. Another piece of iron waits near the forge, slightly thicker again, different in its own quiet way. He takes it in both hands, feeling its cool surface before it meets the heat. Then he places it into the coals. The fire accepts it as it always does. Without change in its nature. Only in its response. The glow begins slowly. A dim red at first. Barely visible beneath the surface. The blacksmith reaches for the bellows, and the air moves through the forge in a steady, familiar rhythm. Press. Release. Press again. The coals respond with a soft deepening of light, as if breathing alongside him. Outside, the afternoon has begun to shift gently toward evening. The sunlight is no longer high. It leans now, stretching long and golden across the ground outside the workshop. Shadows grow more noticeable again, extending quietly from trees, fences, and rooftops. The village remains active, but softened. Less movement. Longer pauses between sounds. A sense that the day is beginning to slow. Inside, the workshop remains warm. Steady. Unchanged. The iron deepens in color. The blacksmith watches until the glow reaches the right point. He lifts it carefully. Carries it to the anvil. Places it down. The hammer rises. And the rhythm returns once more. Strike. Pause. Strike again. The sound is deeper now, matching the thickness of the metal. Each strike carries a little more weight, a little more presence. But still, it remains calm. Measured. Unhurried. The blacksmith works along the length of the iron, shaping it gradually. The form begins to emerge slowly, not all at once, but in stages that build upon each other. The edges soften under repeated strikes. The surface flattens where needed. The structure begins to suggest its purpose. Not yet complete. But becoming clearer. He adjusts the iron slightly, turning it with the tongs. Each movement precise. Each motion practiced. There is no wasted energy. No unnecessary force. Only steady guidance. The iron cools. The glow fades. He returns it to the fire. The cycle continues. Heat. Hammer. Heat again. Time passes, though it is never measured. Only felt through change. Outside, the sky begins to soften in color. The brightness of the afternoon fades into a warmer tone, hinting at the approach of evening. The air outside grows gentler, quieter. The sounds of the village begin to thin, as if the world itself is settling into rest. Inside the workshop, the fire remains constant. The blacksmith lifts the iron again. Back to the anvil. The hammer falls. Again. Again. The piece is more defined now than before. The shape is taking its final direction. Simple lines. Clear edges. A form that feels balanced, even before it is complete. The blacksmith shifts his stance slightly, working closer now, focusing on smaller details. The hammer becomes lighter in his hand. The strikes more precise. The narrow tool returns once more, guiding the final shaping along a subtle line. The sound in the workshop softens. The rhythm slows slightly, not in effort, but in refinement. Each strike matters more now. Each pause feels longer. The iron cools again. But this time, the return to the fire feels like a final step rather than a beginning. The glow rises gently, as if the metal is already nearly finished with its transformation. He lifts it once more. Back to the anvil. A few final adjustments. Soft strikes. Even spacing. The shape settles into its final form. The hammer lowers. The sound fades. And there is stillness. A quiet moment where nothing moves. The blacksmith holds the piece gently in the tongs. Then turns toward the water. The bucket reflects the soft, fading light of evening now, its surface calm and still. He lowers the iron. A gentle hiss rises. Steam curls upward in thin, fading lines. The water ripples outward, then returns to stillness. He lifts the piece out. Sets it with the others. Now 5 pieces rest together. Each shaped through the same steady rhythm. Each carrying the quiet memory of fire and hammer and time. The blacksmith steps back slightly. The fire still burns. But its light feels softer now, as if the day itself is drawing closer to rest. The workshop remains warm. The air steady. And the work, though not yet finished in life, pauses in this moment of calm completion, as the evening slowly begins to settle around everything like a quiet, gentle breath. The workshop holds a different kind of stillness now. Not empty. Not silent. But softened, as if the air itself has grown more patient with the passing of time. The fire continues to burn, though its glow feels less bright than before. It is steady, low, and dependable, like a lantern that has been lit for many hours and still refuses to fade. The blacksmith stands near it for a moment without moving. His hands rest at his sides. His shoulders remain relaxed. There is no urgency in him, no sense of needing to finish quickly, even as the day leans closer toward evening. He simply remains where he is, as if allowing the warmth of the forge to settle into him before continuing. Outside, the light has changed again. The sky has begun its slow transition into evening tones. Soft gold blending into deeper ember. The shadows outside the workshop have grown long and quiet, stretching across the ground like calm lines drawn by the fading sun. The village has grown stiller. Fewer sounds now. Longer silence between them. A door closing somewhere in the distance. A faint voice, then nothing. The day is easing into rest. Inside, the blacksmith returns to the forge. Another piece of iron waits. Smaller now. Simpler. He takes it without hesitation and places it into the coals. The fire accepts it as always. Without change. Without resistance. The glow begins again. Slowly. Softly. The bellows move in their familiar rhythm beneath his hand. Press. Release. Press again. The fire responds in gentle waves of light. The blacksmith watches without leaning forward. Without rushing. Everything here moves at its own natural pace. The iron warms. The color deepens. A faint red appears, then strengthens, then settles into a steady orange that feels quieter than before, as if the fire itself understands the day is nearing its end. He lifts the iron when it is ready. Carries it to the anvil. Places it down. The hammer rises. And the rhythm begins again. Strike. Pause. Strike again. But now the sound feels slightly different. Not in strength, but in atmosphere. It blends with the quiet of the evening outside, as if even the sound of hammer on iron has begun to soften in response to the fading light. Each strike is gentle, careful, intentional. The piece is smaller, and so it changes quickly beneath the hammer. The shape begins to form almost immediately. Simple lines. Clean edges. A final tool of some kind, perhaps. Or something ordinary, meant for daily use. The blacksmith does not think deeply about its purpose. He simply shapes it. He listens to the metal in the quiet way he always does. The iron cools. He returns it to the fire. The cycle continues, but now it feels closer to its end than its beginning. Heat rises once more. The glow returns more softly than before. He lifts it again. Back to the anvil. A few final strikes. Light. Even. Careful. The shape settles into completion more quickly now. There is less correction needed. Less adjustment. More acceptance in the metal itself. As if it is ready. As if it has always been nearly finished. The hammer lowers. The sound fades. A quiet stillness fills the workshop. The blacksmith holds the piece for a moment longer than before. Not longer in thought. Just longer in presence. Then he turns toward the water. The bucket reflects the dimming evening light, now softer, more muted. He lowers the iron. A gentle hiss rises. Steam drifts upward briefly, then disappears into the warm air. The water ripples once, then settles completely. He lifts the piece out. Sets it with the others. Now 6 pieces rest together. Each one shaped through the same slow rhythm. Each one carrying the memory of heat, sound, and steady hands. The blacksmith steps back. The fire still burns, but lower now. Calmer. The workshop feels quieter, as if it is preparing for rest along with the rest of the world. The light outside fades further. Evening is near. And inside this small wooden space, the work pauses in a long, gentle breath, as the day begins to let go of itself, one soft moment at a time. Evening settles more deeply now, not all at once, but in the slow way it always arrives. The light outside the workshop has softened into a muted glow. The colors of the sky are no longer bright. They are gentle now, almost quiet in their own way, as if the day is speaking more softly with each passing moment. Inside, the forge holds a steady warmth. Lower than before. Calmer. The fire no longer rises with the same intensity it held in the morning. It burns in a quiet, controlled way, like a memory of itself, still present but no longer reaching outward. The blacksmith moves with the same steady pace. Nothing has hurried him all day. Nothing hurries him now. Another piece of iron rests near the forge. Smaller again. Simpler. He lifts it without hesitation and places it into the coals. The fire receives it gently. The glow begins again, but more slowly this time, as if even the metal itself is moving with the rhythm of the evening. The bellows move beneath his hand. Press. Release. The air enters the fire in soft waves. The coals brighten just enough to hold the iron, not overwhelm it. Everything feels balanced. Everything feels settled. Outside, the village has grown quiet. The sounds that once drifted through the air earlier in the day are now rare. A distant door closes. A faint step on a wooden porch. Then stillness again. The kind of stillness that does not feel empty, but complete. The blacksmith watches the iron as it warms. He does not lean forward. He does not step closer. He simply observes, as he always does, with a calm attention that asks for nothing more than time. The color returns slowly. A soft red. Then a deeper warmth. Then a steady orange that feels quieter than before. As if the fire itself understands that the day is ending. He lifts the iron. Carries it to the anvil. Places it down. The hammer rises. And the rhythm begins again. But now it is gentler. Almost like a whisper of the earlier sound. Strike. Pause. Strike again. Each movement is careful, not because it must be, but because the day itself feels that way now. The piece changes quickly under the hammer. Smaller work always does. The shape forms easily. Almost naturally. There is less resistance in it. Less need for correction. The blacksmith adjusts the angle slightly. A soft turn with the tongs. A few light strikes. The form becomes clear in a short span of time. Simple. Useful. Complete in its purpose. He continues shaping, but only in small ways now. Finishing touches. Smoothing edges. Balancing weight. The sound in the workshop has grown even softer. It blends with the fading atmosphere of evening outside. The iron cools. He returns it to the fire. But only briefly. Just enough to restore its warmth for final adjustments. The glow rises gently. Not strong. Not bright. Just enough. He lifts it again. Back to the anvil. A few final strikes follow. Each one spaced further apart than before. Each one lighter. More careful. The shape settles into its final form without resistance. As if it has been waiting for this exact moment all along. The hammer lowers. The sound fades completely into stillness. A pause follows. Not long. But full. The blacksmith holds the piece for a moment in quiet recognition. Then turns toward the water. The bucket is dim now, reflecting only the soft remnants of evening light. He lowers the iron. A soft hiss rises. Shorter than before. Quieter. Steam drifts up gently, then disappears into the cooling air. The water ripples once. Then becomes still again. He lifts the piece out. And sets it down with the others. Now 7 pieces rest together. All different. All complete. All shaped through the same slow rhythm of fire, hammer, and time. The blacksmith does not look at them for long. He steps back instead. The forge still glows, but only faintly now. The fire has entered its resting strength. No longer rising. Only holding. The workshop feels different now. Not empty. Not full. But settled. Like the end of a long breath. Outside, the sky has deepened further into evening. The last light of the day fades gently from the horizon. And inside the small wooden workshop, the work slows to its final pause, as the world outside and the world within begin to share the same quiet stillness, drifting together into the calm of night. Night does not arrive suddenly here. It arrives slowly, like a curtain drawn without sound, without effort, without notice until it has already settled. Outside the workshop, the sky has deepened into a soft, dark blue. The last traces of evening light remain only at the edge of the horizon, fading gently, as if they were never meant to stay for long. Inside, the forge holds its final warmth. The fire is low now. Not fading completely. Just resting. A steady glow beneath the coals, enough to keep the space alive with heat, but no longer shaping the world around it. The blacksmith stands near it for a long moment without moving. His hands are still. His breathing is even. There is no sense of urgency left in the room. Only completion. Only quiet. The last piece of iron waits nearby. Smaller than the others. Almost delicate in comparison. He lifts it with the same calm care as before and places it into the coals. The fire responds softly. No flare. No rise. Just a gentle acceptance. The bellows move one final time in a slow, measured rhythm. Press. Release. Press. The glow deepens just enough to hold the metal. Not more. Not less. Everything now feels balanced in its stillness. Outside, the village has fully quieted. No voices drip through the air now. No footsteps on the road. Only the distant presence of wind moving through trees, and the faint settling sounds of night beginning to take hold. The blacksmith watches the iron warm. There is no need to wait long. The piece is small. It changes quickly. A soft red appears. Then deepens. Then steadies into a quiet orange glow that feels almost subdued, as if even heat has grown more gentle with the passing hours. He lifts it. Carries it to the anvil. Places it down. The hammer rises. And for the final time in this long, steady day, the rhythm returns. Strike. Pause. Strike again. The sound is softer now than at any other point. Not weaker. Just quieter. As if the workshop itself has learned to speak more gently in response to the night. Each strike shapes the final piece with care. No adjustments remain to be made in haste. Only small refinements. A smoothing of edges. A soft alignment of form. The blacksmith moves slowly, not because he is tired, but because the world around him has slowed with him. The iron cools. He returns it briefly to the fire. Just enough to finish. The glow rises once more, faint and calm. He lifts it again. Back to the anvil. A few final strikes follow. Light. Even. Final. The hammer lowers for the last time. And there is silence. Not sudden. But complete. The blacksmith holds the piece for a moment longer than all the others. Not in thought. Not in reflection. Just in stillness. Then he turns toward the water. The bucket reflects almost no light now, only the faint suggestion of the forge behind him. He lowers the iron. A soft hiss rises. Smaller than before. Gentler. The steam drifts upward and dissolves into the cool air of the workshop. The water ripples once. Then becomes still. He lifts the piece out. And places it with the others. Now 8 pieces rest together. All finished. All shaped. All quiet. The blacksmith steps back slowly. The fire has nearly settled into embers now. Its glow is low, steady, and peaceful, like a final heartbeat before rest. The workshop is warm, but no longer active. It holds the memory of the day rather than the movement of it. He stands for a moment longer in the center of the room. Not looking for anything. Not preparing for anything. Just present in the stillness that follows long work. Outside, night has fully taken hold. The sky is dark now, deep and calm, with no remaining trace of the sun except for a faint memory along the edge of the world. The village is silent. The land is quiet. Everything has softened into rest. The blacksmith finally turns away from the forge. His movements are unhurried, as they have been all day. He does not rush toward ending. He simply lets the ending arrive on its own. The workshop remains behind him, warm and still. The fire remains low and steady. And as he steps toward the door, the world outside waits in calm darkness, holding the day gently as it slips into night, like something quietly remembered rather than finished. The door opens slowly, with the same familiar weight it has carried through countless evenings. There is no sudden sound. Only a soft shift in the wood, a gentle breath of air moving between inside and outside. The blacksmith steps out into the night. The world beyond the workshop feels different now. Not changed. Just quieter. The air is cooler against his skin, carrying the faint scent of earth that has rested through the day and is now settling into the calm of night. The ground beneath his boots holds the softness of earlier warmth fading into stillness. Above him, the sky is deep and wide. Dark, but not empty. Small lights rest within it, steady and distant, as if the day has left behind quiet reminders of itself in the sky. He does not look for long. Only long enough to feel the presence of it. Then he turns slightly, standing near the doorway for a moment before moving. Behind him, the workshop glows faintly through small gaps in the wood. A low ember-like light. Not bright enough to call attention. Just enough to remind that it is still there. Still warm. Still alive in a quiet way. The blacksmith takes a slow step forward. Then another. His movements remain steady, unchanged from the rhythm of the day, even though the work has ended. There is no urgency in him now. No weight of unfinished motion. Only the gentle transition from labor into rest. The path to his home is short. Familiar. The ground beneath him is quiet, absorbing each step without sound. The air around him is still, except for the faintest movement of wind passing through distant trees. He pauses once along the way. Not for thought. Not for reflection. Only because the night feels like it allows pauses to exist more naturally. He stands there for a moment, looking out across the village. The shapes of buildings rest in soft darkness. Windows hold no light now. Roofs and fences blend into the quiet outline of night. Everything is at rest. He continues walking. The door to his home is already familiar in its silence. He reaches it, places a hand on the wood, and opens it without hesitation. Inside, the air is cooler than the workshop, but still comfortable. Still calm. A simple space. A place of rest after a day shaped by fire and iron. He steps inside and closes the door behind him. The sound is soft. Final. Not heavy. Just complete. For a moment, he stands still in the center of the room. There is no need to move quickly. No need to shift immediately from one state to another. The transition itself is part of the rhythm, just as much as the hammering, just as much as the fire. He removes his boots slowly. Places them neatly where they belong. His hands move with the same quiet certainty they held throughout the day. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is delayed. When he is finished, he sits down. Not with exhaustion, but with ease. A settling. Like the final note of a long, steady song that does not echo, but simply fades into stillness. Outside, the village remains silent. The workshop continues to glow faintly in the distance, holding the memory of heat within its walls. And within that small home, the blacksmith sits quietly, letting the day loosen its hold, piece by piece, until there is nothing left but calm. No thoughts pressing forward. No work waiting behind. Only the soft presence of the night. And the steady feeling that everything, for now, is complete in exactly the way it was meant to be. The night settles more deeply now, not as something that arrives, but as something that slowly becomes everything. Inside the small home, there is only a quiet presence. No movement beyond what is needed. No sound that asks to be noticed. The blacksmith sits for a while longer, letting the stillness around him grow familiar again, as if he is returning to a place he has always known, even after a long day away from it. His hands rest loosely in his lap. They still carry a faint memory of the forge. Not heat anymore. Just memory. A feeling that lingers without weight. Outside, the village has fully disappeared into darkness. Not in a way that feels empty, but in a way that feels complete. Everything has taken its place for the night. The roads are still. The homes are still. Even the wind moves more gently now, as if it understands that nothing needs to be disturbed. The workshop in the distance remains faintly present. A small, quiet glow between the trees. Like a single, patient ember that refuses to fully go out. The blacksmith eventually stands. Not suddenly. Not with decision. But with the natural easing of time that follows rest. He moves slowly through his home. There is no task waiting for him. No unfinished step. Only the simple, quiet actions that belong to the end of a day. A cup of water. A moment at the table. A pause near the window. He looks out once more. The sky is darker now. Deeper than before. The faint lights above remain steady, unchanged, distant. He does not search for meaning in them. He simply observes. Then turns away. The room grows quieter as the night continues. The fire inside the home is small, if it exists at all. More a comfort than a necessity. A soft glow that does not demand attention. He sits once more. This time for longer. The body relaxes in a way that only comes when the day has fully released its hold. There is no sense of urgency left anywhere in him. No part of the day still reaching forward. Everything has settled. Even thought becomes slower now. Less structured. More open. Like water resting after movement. Outside, the world remains unchanged. The same quiet fields. The same resting village. The same distant workshop holding its faint warmth like a memory that refuses to disappear too quickly. Time passes without marking itself. It does not announce itself. It simply continues. The blacksmith eventually stands again. Moves toward rest without thinking about it as a decision. The room guides him in its own quiet way. The floor creaks softly beneath his steps. The air remains still. He prepares for sleep in the same unhurried rhythm that has carried him through the entire day. There is no difference now between action and pause. Everything feels like continuation. Everything feels like ease. When he finally lies down, it is not an ending that feels final. It is simply another settling. Another soft release. His breathing slows gradually. The weight of the day does not press on him. It dissolves instead. Like warmth fading gently from iron after it leaves the fire. Outside, the night holds everything in place. The workshop remains a distant, quiet glow. The village remains still. The land rests without movement. And above it all, the sky stays wide and calm, holding the world in a silence that feels complete but never empty. The blacksmith closes his eyes. And the day, in all its slow and steady motion, finally becomes memory. Not gone. Not lost. Just resting. Like everything else in this quiet, patient night. The night moves forward without sound. Not quickly. Not slowly. Just steadily, in a way that cannot be measured except by stillness itself. Inside the small home, the blacksmith sleeps. His breathing is calm, even, unbroken by anything outside or within. There are no dreams that arrive with urgency. only a quiet drifting, like floating through water that has no current, no direction, only depth and softness. The body rests the way iron rests after leaving the fire. Cooling. Settling. Returning to its simplest state. Outside, the village remains completely still. No doors open. No footsteps cross the roads. Even the wind has softened into something almost imperceptible, moving only when it chooses, then disappearing again into the dark. The workshop stands a short distance away. It is no longer active, but it is not empty. A faint glow still lives inside it. Low. Patient. Like embers that do not rush toward extinction, but instead remain for as long as they naturally can. The building feels like part of the night now, rather than something separate from it. It belongs to the darkness as much as it belongs to the day. Time continues without interruption. The stars above do not change in any visible way. They remain where they are, steady and distant, holding their quiet positions in the sky. The world beneath them rests. Everything has slowed into a single shared rhythm of stillness. Inside the home, there is only the soft presence of sleep. No tension. No movement. Only the quiet continuation of rest. Hours pass in a way that cannot be marked. Not by sound. Not by light. Only by the gentle deepening of night. The workshop's faint glow gradually softens further, becoming less noticeable, more like a memory of warmth than warmth itself. The fire inside does not fully disappear. It simply becomes less present. A hidden kind of light. Patient. Small. Constant. The village remains unchanged. Houses, roads, fields all resting beneath the same calm sky. There is a sense that nothing is waiting. Nothing is unfinished. Everything is exactly where it is meant to be. The blacksmith turns slightly in his sleep. A slow, natural movement. Then stillness returns. Even sleep itself feels steady here. Unbroken. Like the rhythm of hammer and iron earlier in the day, but softened until it becomes only quiet breath. Outside, the night deepens further. Not darker in a sudden way. Just more complete. The edges of the world blur gently into one another. Tree lines, rooftops, distant paths all merging into a community of shadow and rest. The workshop remains the only subtle reminder of warmth in the distance. A faint presence that neither calls attention nor disappears. Just remains. Like something that knows it will be needed again, but not yet. The hours continue. Slow. Even. Unmarked. And within this stillness, the world holds itself gently, as if afraid to disturb the peace it has finally found. The blacksmith sleeps through it all. And the night, without asking anything in return, carries him forward until morning begins to return in its own quiet way. Before morning arrives, there is a kind of silence that feels even deeper than night. It is not a change in the world. It is only a change in awareness. The air remains still. The village remains still. The land remains still. But everything feels slightly closer, as if the world is holding its breath just before light returns. Inside the small home, the blacksmith sleeps in that quiet in-between space. Not fully in night anymore. Not yet in morning. Just resting within a long, soft pause that stretches without tension. His breathing continues at the same slow rhythm. Steady. Unbroken. Outside, the workshop stands in the distance. Its faint glow has grown even softer through the hours. Nearly indistinguishable now from the darkness around it. But it is still there. Still holding the memory of fire. still carrying the warmth of the day that came before. Nothing in it moves. Nothing needs to. Time passes without marking itself. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the edge of the night begins to shift. Not suddenly. Not brightly. Just a faint suggestion of change along the farthest line of the sky. A deep darkness that is no longer absolute. The beginning of something returning. The village remains asleep. No sound rises with this change. No movement follows it. Only the smallest transition in tone across the sky. Inside the home, the blacksmith remains in rest. His body does not react to the shift. It does not need to. Everything continues as it should. The night and morning exchange places in silence. Gradually. Without ceremony. The sky begins to soften at its edge. A faint, distant gray appears, so subtle it might be mistaken for imagination. But it grows. Slowly. Patiently. The first hint of morning does not announce itself. It simply exists. The workshop, still in the distance, begins to separate slightly from the darkness around it. Not because it changes, but because everything else begins to. The world prepares itself in quiet layers. The blacksmith's sleep remains steady. Deep. Unbroken. There is no rush in his rest, just as there was no rush in his work. Everything in his life moves with the same steady rhythm, even when he is not awake to feel it. The sky continues its slow transition. Darkness loosens. Light gathers quietly behind it. The village remains still, as if unaware of the change or unconcerned by it. But the change continues anyway. Soft. Inevitable. The workshop now holds a faint outline again. A shape rather than a glow. A presence rather than a light. It waits without waiting. The home remains quiet. The blacksmith turns once more in his sleep, gently, without waking. Then stillness returns again. The world continues its slow movement toward morning. And as the night begins to thin at its edges, the entire landscape rests in that quiet moment between endings and beginnings, where nothing is finished, and nothing has yet started again. The first true light of morning does not arrive all at once. It gathers slowly, like water filling a shallow space, spreading gently across the edge of the world until it becomes something that can no longer be ignored. The sky shifts from deep darkness into a soft gray blue. Not bright. Not warm yet. Just present. The village begins to reappear in shape rather than shadow. Roofs, fences, and paths return to quiet visibility, as if the world is remembering itself again after a long pause. Inside the small home, the blacksmith still sleeps. His rest remains deep and even. There is no sudden change in him as the morning arrives. Only the natural continuation of breath and stillness. Outside, the workshop stands quietly between trees. Its shape is now clearer in the early light. The faint glow that once marked the end of the day is gone. What remains is structure. Wood. Stone. Silence. The fire inside has settled completely into embers. Not active. Not gone. Just resting in a low, dark warmth that holds the memory of everything that passed through it. The air of the morning is cooler now. Fresh in a way that feels clean and unspoken. A light breeze moves through the village, gentle enough to notice only by its effect rather than its presence. Leaves shift slightly. Grass bends softly. Then stillness returns. Inside the home, the blacksmith begins to stir. Not quickly. Not as a response to anything. Just a gradual return, as if the body itself is following the same rhythm as the world outside. His breathing changes slightly. Still calm, but no longer entirely asleep. There is a moment where he exists between rest and waking. A quiet threshold where nothing demands attention. Then, slowly, his eyes open. The room is dim but no longer dark. Morning has entered in a soft, patient way. He does not move immediately. He remains where he is for a while, allowing awareness to return without force. The ceiling above him is still. The air in the room is still. Everything feels balanced in a familiar way. He sits up slowly. No urgency in the motion. Only the natural return to wakefulness. Outside, the village is now gently visible in full morning light. Not bright yet. Just clear. The shapes of the world are more defined again. The blacksmith stands after a moment, his movements steady and unhurried. There is no sense of being behind. No need to catch up. The day has not rushed ahead of him. It has simply arrived. He moves through his small home with the same calm rhythm as always. Each step unhurried. Each motion simple. There is no change in routine, because nothing in him needs changing. Outside, the workshop waits. Still. Familiar. Patient. The faint memory of yesterday's heat rests within it, though invisible now. The door stands closed. The path between home and workshop is quiet under the soft morning light. The world feels like it has reset itself gently overnight. The blacksmith reaches the door and pauses for only a moment. Not hesitation. Just presence. Then he opens it. The morning air greets him again. Cool. Quiet. Steady. He steps outside. And the day begins once more, not as something new, but as something continuing, flowing forward from everything that came before it, into the calm rhythm of work, fire, and time. The morning air feels different from the night before. Not because it has changed completely, but because everything in it is now more visible, more defined, more awake in its own quiet way. The blacksmith stands outside his home for a moment, letting that stillness settle around him. There is no rush in the world yet. Only the soft beginning of movement returning to everything. He takes a slow step forward. Then another. The path toward the workshop is familiar beneath his boots. Each step lands with the same quiet certainty as every other morning before it. The ground is slightly cool from the night. Dew still rests lightly on the grass nearby, catching faint traces of light as the sun slowly rises higher. The workshop comes into view again between the trees. No longer just a shape in shadow. Now fully present in the morning light. Wooden beams. A simple roof. A steady structure that has held many days just like this one. He reaches the door and places his hand on it. It feels cool at first. Then familiar. He opens it. Inside, the air holds the memory of yesterday's warmth. Not heat anymore. Just presence. A quiet reminder that work lives here, even when still. The forge is dark. The embers are resting low beneath the surface, holding a faint warmth that has not yet fully disappeared. Everything is still in its place. The anvil. The tools along the wall. The bench where finished pieces now rest together in silence. The blacksmith steps inside. The door closes softly behind him. For a moment, he does nothing. He simply stands in the center of the workshop, allowing the space to feel like itself again. Morning light filters through the wooden gaps in thin, soft lines. Dust moves gently in the air, barely noticeable unless watched closely. Then, slowly, he moves. Not toward the forge immediately. Not toward the tools. But first into the rhythm of beginning. He reaches for the bellows. A familiar motion. A quiet preparation. The forge responds even before it is fully awakened. He begins to feed it air. Slowly at first. Patiently. The embers stir. Not suddenly. Not sharply. But like something remembering how to breathe again. A faint glow returns beneath the coals. Soft at first. Then steady. The blacksmith watches without leaning in too closely. There is no need to force it. The fire will return in its own time. He continues the rhythm of the bellows. Press. Release. Press. The glow strengthens gently. The workshop begins to warm again, not from heat yet, but from anticipation. Outside, the village continues its morning awakening. Distant footsteps return. A door opens somewhere far away. A soft sound of water being drawn. All of it remains gentle, layered into the background of a world that is slowly starting again. Inside, the fire begins to form more clearly. A small flame appears. Then another. Then a steady core of warmth that grows with each patient breath of air from the bellows. The blacksmith sets the bellows down for a moment. Watches the fire hold itself. There is something steady in this beginning. Something unchanged, even after all the days before it. The same rhythm. The same quiet return. The workshop is alive again. Not loudly. Not suddenly. But in the same calm way it always has been. The blacksmith reaches for the first piece of iron for the new day. And as he lifts it, the cycle begins once more, not as repetition, but as continuation, flowing forward through fire, through time, and through the steady hands of a life that moves gently, one moment at a time. The first piece of iron for the new day rests in his hands for only a moment before it moves toward the forge. It is cool again. Quiet again. As if the long night has erased nothing, but simply softened everything into a fresh beginning. He places it into the coals. The fire receives it without hesitation. There is no resistance in the metal, no tension in the moment. Only the familiar meeting of iron and heat. The blacksmith reaches for the bellows once more. The rhythm returns immediately, as if it never truly left. Press. Release. Press again. The embers respond slowly at first, then more fully, their glow spreading outward in soft waves of orange light. The workshop begins to warm again. Not quickly. Not sharply. Just steadily, like the day itself remembering how to exist. Outside, morning has grown clearer. The light is now more present across the village. Roofs reflect a soft brightness. Paths become more visible. The world feels open again, but still gentle, still unhurried. Inside, the blacksmith watches the iron begin its transformation. At first, nothing obvious happens. Then, slowly, the surface begins to change. A faint red appears beneath the dark exterior. It deepens gradually, like a quiet sunrise contained within the metal itself. He does not rush it. He never does. He stands beside the forge, letting the process unfold in its own time. The fire crackles softly. Small shifts of sound fill the space, not loud enough to interrupt the calm, only present enough to remind that the world is active again. The blacksmith adjusts the bellows slightly. A steady breath into the fire. The glow strengthens. The iron begins to respond more fully now. Its surface softens in color, moving from dark to deep red, then toward a warmer orange that signals readiness. He watches closely. not with urgency, but with understanding. When the moment comes, he lifts the iron from the fire. The air around it holds a faint shimmer of heat. He turns toward the anvil, places it down. The hammer rises, and the rhythm begins again. Strike. Pause. Strike again. The sound returns to the workshop like something remembered rather than restarted. Steady. Familiar. Comforting in its repetition. The iron yields beneath each strike, slowly taking shape again, just as it did yesterday, and the day before that, and all the days before that. But it is never the same piece. Never the same moment. Each day carries its own quiet version of the work. The blacksmith shifts his stance slightly. A small adjustment. A natural motion. The hammer continues. The shape begins to form more clearly now. Edges flatten. Lines appear. Purpose begins to take form in the metal. Outside, the village continues its gentle morning movement. A cart rolls somewhere in the distance. A voice drifts briefly through the air, then fades. The world remains calm, but alive. Inside, the fire maintains its steady glow. The blacksmith returns the iron to the forge when it cools. The cycle continues without interruption. Heat. Hammer. Heat again. Each step flowing into the next as naturally as breath. There is no beginning now that feels separate from what came before. Only continuation. Only presence. Only the steady shaping of time through work that never needs to hurry to feel complete. The iron returns to the fire without hesitation, as if it understands the rhythm better with each passing cycle. The coals shift gently around it, holding it in a steady warmth that feels less like transformation now and more like continuation. The blacksmith steps back slightly. Not away from the work. Just enough to let the fire speak for itself for a moment. The bellows rest still. The forge breathes on its own for a short while, the embers glowing in a calm, steady pulse. Outside, the morning has fully settled into its shape. The village is awake now, but still peaceful. Movement exists, but it is soft. Measured. A wagon passes in the distance, its sound fading slowly into the open air. A door opens and closes somewhere nearby, not sharply, but gently, like part of the natural rhythm of the day. Inside the workshop, the iron begins to glow again. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just steadily, as if it has always intended to become light. The blacksmith watches the change with quiet attention. There is nothing new in it. And yet, nothing is ever exactly the same either. He reaches for the bellows again. Press. Release. Press. The fire responds, deepening in color, growing more alive without becoming chaotic. Heat gathers in layers. The workshop becomes warm in a familiar way, like returning to something that was never fully left behind. The blacksmith lifts the iron when it is ready. Carries it to the anvil. Places it down with care that has been refined over years of repetition. The hammer rises. And the rhythm resumes. Strike. Pause. Strike again. The sound fills the space once more, steady and unbroken. Each strike shapes the metal further, refining what was already beginning to take form. The edges respond more easily now. The structure becomes clearer with each movement. The blacksmith adjusts the angle slightly, turning the iron with the tongs in a slow, practiced motion. There is no urgency in his hands. Only familiarity. Only calm precision. The iron cools gradually beneath the hammer. He returns it to the fire without pause. The cycle continues. Heat rising. Color returning. Shape being guided forward in small, patient steps. Outside, the light has shifted slightly higher in the sky. The shadows are shorter now, softer, less defined. The day is fully present, but still gentle in its movement. Inside, the forge holds its steady glow. The blacksmith works through the rhythm again. Lift. Strike. Return. Each motion blending into the next without separation. There is no sense of time passing in sharp divisions. Only a continuous flow of quiet activity. The iron becomes more defined now. Not finished, but closer. The shape carries intention more clearly with each pass of the hammer. The blacksmith slows slightly as the piece begins to respond more precisely. His strikes become lighter, more deliberate. The sound softens in response. The workshop remains calm, balanced. The fire remains steady. The work continues without interruption, as it always has, moving forward in the same quiet rhythm that fills the space between heat, metal, and the slow passing of an ordinary, peaceful day. The iron rests again in the heart of the fire, where the coals hold it gently, almost patiently, as if they have been waiting for it to return. The glow begins once more, soft at first, then slowly deepening. There is no urgency in the change. Only a steady unfolding, like the day itself continuing without interruption. The blacksmith stands close, his posture relaxed, familiar with every small sound the forge makes. The faint crackle of coal. The soft movement of air. The quiet breath of heat rising upward. He reaches for the bellows and gives them a slow press. Then another. The fire responds without haste, brightening just enough to hold the iron in its warm center. Outside, the village continues its calm rhythm of morning into midday. The light is stronger now, but still gentle. It spreads evenly across rooftops and paths, touching everything without sharpness. A few distant sounds drift through the air and fade again, never lingering long enough to break the stillness. Inside, the workshop feels balanced between warmth and quiet. The blacksmith watches the iron carefully. It has reached a familiar point again. The color has deepened to a steady orange, signaling readiness. He does not hesitate. He lifts it from the fire. The glow lingers for a brief moment in the air, as if reluctant to leave the warmth behind. Then it fades as he turns toward the anvil. The iron is placed down with steady care. The hammer rises. And the rhythm returns. Strike. Pause. Strike again. Each sound is measured, even, familiar. The metal responds in the same patient way it always does, softening its edges under the steady guidance of repeated motion. The shape is clearer now than before. More defined. More certain. Not rushed into existence, but allowed to become itself through time and attention. The blacksmith adjusts the piece slightly, turning it with the tongs. A small shift. A quiet correction. Then the hammer falls again. The sound echoes gently through the workshop, blending with the low warmth of the forge. The iron cools gradually. He returns it to the fire. The cycle continues without pause. Heat rising. Color returning. Movement repeating in a calm, unbroken flow. There is something deeply steady in this repetition. Not monotony, but rhythm. A rhythm that does not demand attention, yet holds everything together. Outside, the world remains open and still. The village breathes at its own pace. The fields beyond remain quiet under the light. Nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels incomplete. Inside, the blacksmith lifts the iron again when it is ready. Back to the anvil. The hammer rises. Falls again. But now the movements are smaller. More refined. The shape is nearing its final form. The edges respond with ease. The surface smooths more quickly than before. The blacksmith slows his rhythm slightly, not from fatigue, but from precision. Each strike now carries intention in its lightness. Each pause carries understanding. The iron begins to feel settled in its shape. Not finished yet. But close. Very close. He lowers the hammer for a moment and simply observes it. Not with judgment. Not with expectation. Only awareness. Then, without breaking the calm, he returns it to the fire once more. Just briefly. Just enough. The glow returns softly, like a final breath of warmth before completion. The workshop remains steady. The fire remains low and controlled. And the day continues forward in its quiet way, carrying the work along with it, step by step, moment by moment, through the same gentle rhythm that has guided everything since the first light of morning. The fire holds the iron once more, but now it feels different. Not in strength. Not in heat. But in intention, as if the metal itself understands it is nearing the end of its journey. The glow rises slowly, a soft orange that does not spread too far, does not demand attention, but simply exists in a steady, quiet way. The blacksmith watches without moving closer. He has seen this moment many times before. And still, he never rushes it. The bellows remain still for a while. The fire is allowed to breathe on its own. The coals shift gently beneath the iron, holding it in a calm, even warmth. Outside, the day has reached its quiet middle again. The sun is higher now, though its presence feels softened by the atmosphere around it. Light moves across the village in slow, steady patterns. Nothing feels hurried. Nothing feels sharp. A distant sound rises briefly, then fades into the open air. Inside the workshop, the blacksmith reaches for the bellows again. One slow press. Then another. The fire responds, but gently, as if matching the calm pace of the room. The iron brightens slightly. Not dramatically. Just enough to signal readiness. The blacksmith steps forward. Lifts the iron from the coals. Carries it to the anvil. Places it down. The hammer rises. And now the rhythm feels closer to its final form. Strike. Pause. Strike again. The sound is lighter than before, almost delicate in its repetition. Each strike is precise. Controlled. The shape is nearly complete now, requiring only the smallest adjustments. Edges are smoothed. Lines are refined. Balance is corrected in subtle, almost invisible ways. The blacksmith turns the iron slightly, making careful use of the tongs. Every movement is intentional, but calm. Nothing is forced. Everything flows. The iron cools more quickly now. He returns it to the fire, but only briefly. A short return. Just enough to restore warmth for the final shaping. The glow rises softly again, as if the metal itself is taking its last breath of heat. He lifts it once more. Back to the anvil. A few final strikes follow. Light. Even. Measured. Each sound feels quieter than the last, blending into the stillness of the workshop. The shape settles. It is no longer forming. It is becoming final. The hammer lowers. There is a pause. A long, quiet pause where nothing moves. The blacksmith holds the piece gently in the tongs. Not with hesitation, but with recognition. Then he turns toward the water. The bucket rests still, reflecting the soft light of the workshop in muted tones. He lowers the iron. A gentle hiss rises. Not loud. Not sharp. Just a soft release of heat returning to stillness. Steam rises briefly, then fades into the air. The water ripples once. Then becomes calm again. He lifts the piece out. And sets it with the others. Now the bench holds many finished forms together. Each one slightly different. Each one shaped through the same steady rhythm of fire, hammer, and time. The blacksmith steps back slowly. His hands rest at his sides. The forge behind him burns lower now. Not fading. Just resting. The workshop feels quieter than before, as if it understands the day is approaching its final pause. Outside, the light has begun to shift again. Softening. Easing toward the later part of the day. The world remains calm, unchanged in its steady rhythm. Inside, there is no urgency left in anything. Only presence. Only completion in small moments that continue to flow one into another. The blacksmith stands in the center of it all, still, steady, and calm, as the work gently settles into silence around him, like a long breath finally coming to rest. The workshop grows quieter as the fire lowers into its most gentle state. Not gone. Not finished. Just resting, like something that no longer needs to prove it is alive. The blacksmith stands for a long moment in the center of the room. No movement comes from him. No thought presses forward. Only the soft awareness of everything that has been done. The bench holds the finished pieces in still silence. They do not shine. They do not speak. They simply remain, shaped by hours that now feel distant, though they have only just passed. The air is warm, but no longer active. It carries no urgency. Only memory. The blacksmith finally turns slightly, letting his gaze pass over the workshop one last time. The anvil. The forge. The tools resting along the wall. Everything in its place. Everything complete in its own quiet way. Outside, the light has softened again. The day is not ending sharply. It is easing. Like breath slowing before rest. He walks toward the door. Not quickly. Not slowly. Just naturally, as if the body already knows this path without instruction. His hand touches the wood. For a moment, he pauses. Not because something remains undone. But because stillness itself has weight here. Then he opens the door. The evening air greets him gently. Cooler now. Softer. The world outside is quiet in the way only a long day can become quiet. He steps out. The door closes behind him with a soft, final sound. Inside the workshop, the fire continues its low, steady glow for a while longer. Outside, the village rests. The fields rest. The sky stretches above everything in a calm, unbroken silence. The blacksmith does not look back. Not out of distance. But because there is no need. The day has already been lived. Fully. Quietly. Completely. He walks slowly away from the workshop, his steps blending into the stillness of evening. And as he goes, nothing follows him. Nothing pulls him forward. Only the gentle presence of a day that has ended exactly as it should have. Softly. Ordinarily. And at peace.